Welcome to Comic Sans, the podcast about comics for those who are sans knowledge. I'm Yen, and I am delighted to be starting on season 3. They said we couldn't make it.
You know what else they say?
What?
Third time's the charm.
True. Maybe we'll get it right this time, folks. Maybe we'll actually get it right.
Well, since it's the top of the new season, introduce yourself. You are Yen, and you are the...
I am the comic half of the podcast. I know more about comics than Nat, therefore making me a veritable authority on the subject, apparently.
It is true. My name is Nat. I am the Sans half of the podcast. You could say I'm Mr. Sansman. You could say I'm Sansual. What else you want to say?
All I've got on my mind now is Sansual.
I'm a Sansasaurus.
Oh, that's not bad.
That's pretty good. That's
not bad. Sans from Undertale? That mean anything to you?
No.
I figured.
A new season. Wow. I'm excited. I've grown a lot over the past 2 seasons. I feel like my knowledge in comics has increased, I'd say exponentially.
Yeah, I mean, truly, we went from like 1, you're now at like a 16.
What scale are we working on here?
I'm not saying any scale, but like I'm just saying exponentially, you've double 1, you get to 2, you get to 4, and you get to 8, and you get to 16.
I see.
You see what I'm saying?
I see. Is
Yeah.
that a logarithmic scale?
Yes, it is a logarithmic scale that has no end in sight.
Thank you.
Because-
I can't wait to reach like 3,200.
Well, because there's no way to like end your knowledge on comics. There's always another comic to read. Well, Nat, before we get into season 3, I want to say that season 3, as Nat is now more knowledgeable on comics, we're not necessarily shifting beats, but we're... Okay, actually, we are shifting beats. Okay.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right. No. But we are switching tracks a little bit, where now Nat has a basic knowledge of comics. And so I'm going to be
Thank you.
talking less and less about the comic before we read it.
I thought you were just going to say I'm going to be talking less and less, and then I was
No,
I was thrilled.
no,
I was
absolutely
thrilled.
not, sir. Absolutely not. You put this mic in my hand, I don't shut the hell up. But we're just going to be reading things that excite me. We're still going to be doing pretty diverse genres. We've got our full selection lined up for this season. Some pretty exciting picks. But yeah, we're just going to be going across the board, seeing what happens and watching what happens live.
Well, live for us, not live
Yeah.
for them.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, that's
pre-recorded.
true. That's
Just want to
true.
make that clear.
Yeah.
As you're listening to this, we are not talking in real time.
You know, I was thinking about this the other day about how like some comedy podcasts have like live shows.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, it'd be so funny if comics, I mean, we'll never have this. If we had a live show and then in the middle of it, everybody
just
stops
stop and
and we go off stage and everybody has to read the comic and then they come back in an indeterminate amount of time. I think that's an awful idea. Well, let's get into it, Nat. Nat, I'm very excited for what we're going to read today.
I can tell.
I think there's no chance you're going to guess what we're reading today.
I mean, I agree.
But I still want you to try.
For what?
I'm going to give you this and only this, okay?
Okay.
Yabba dabba doo.
Oh. Scooby-Doo. You thought I wouldn't know Scooby-Doo?
You're wrong.
Oh.
That's not Scooby-Doo.
Oh, Flintstones. What does Scooby-Doo say?
Ruh-roh. You said it with such confidence. And then you kept piling on.
I got it right the second time. Flintstones, meet the Flintstones. Sorry. We can't do more. Copyright
Oh,
strikes.
true. Okay. Okay, well, so you know about the Flintstones.
One of the key things I know about it, it's not the only thing I know about it.
Yeah.
One of the key things is that Jacob Collier
Okay.
won his first Grammy for his arrangement of the Flintstones theme song that he posted on YouTube.
Okay, everyone, please pull that up right now. Forget this show.
This is really important.
You probably already have like a listening app open. It's going to be very easy to switch out of us and to Jacob Collier doing the Flintstones.
Hey guys.
Hi, guys.
Hey, guys. It's me.
Jacob Collier.
Jacob Collier.
I bet you didn't know you switched.
Flintstones, meet the...
So actually, it is a little related to Scooby-Doo.
Oh, see?
I mean, because they're both Hanna-Barbera cartoons, but there's actually a closer link
Wait,
than
they
you
were by
think.
the same person?
Hanna-Barbera is a company.
Oh, that's not clear. Terrible name for a company, if I say so myself.
The rights to comic publishing for Hanna-Barbera properties lies with Warner Brothers, who owns DC.
I see.
And so way back in like 2015, DC was like, okay, you know what? We're going to use this. And so there was a Scooby-Doo and the Apocalypse one that was like a very gritty, like, whoa, Shaggy didn't have an arm.
Oh dear.
Yeah, something like that. And
That
then,
is
like,
Shaggy.
Thank you for the Singaporeans out there. And Scooby-Doo had like a cybernetic eye. But that's beside the point. What we really want to talk about is the Flintstones comic.
Yep.
We've got the glorious trade full collected edition with us by Mark Russell, Steve Pugh, and Chris Chakri. In a sense, this is a reboot, right? This is a reboot of an existing property in the comic book form. The reboot sometimes is about making an old thing relevant. about honoring a property, about help me out here, help me out.
Modernizing it.
For a new audience.
Yeah.
Right. But that was not what Mark Russell was interested in.
Okay.
So, context, Mark Russell is now a very acclaimed comic writer. Before that, he was a novelist. But at the time of the Flintstones, he had only published one comic, which was called Prez, which it was a reboot of an old line where a teenager becomes president. This is DC Comics.
I see.
And the comic got canceled at issue 6 because it didn't have enough attention.
Okay.
And so then his editor comes to him and says, hey, you want to do the Flintstones? And he thinks this is, well, okay. I guess this is them giving me the boot. I guess this is them very politely saying, you can do one more, and then we're gonna close the door after you on the way out. And so he's approaching the Flintstones with not necessarily a veneration for the property itself, but for what the property can mean. He phrases it a lot better than I am, so I'm going to read a little bit from his introduction. So when they asked me to write the Flintstones, I thought that maybe this was the last comic book anyone would ever let me write. And I figured that if I was going to be asked to leave the party, then I was taking all the salami with me.
Nice.
Not a phrase I've ever heard before.
No, but I get it.
I resolved to pack as much as I had to say as possible into the Flintstones, to write the story of Bedrock not as some tasteful homage to a 1960s cartoon, but as the story of the world's first civilization and my grand critique of every civilization that came after it.
Wow.
Which admittedly, this is still Mark Russell, which admittedly sounds horribly pretentious.
It does.
And it probably was.
And very ambitious.
But I was beyond the point of caring back then, and hopefully I still am.
Wow.
So I think what makes the Flintstones...
Very dramatic, huh?
It's very dramatic.
He really thought his career was over.
He really did. He really did.
Like, relax, dude. There's other publishers out there.
But I think that what makes the Flintstones so remarkable and why I'm so excited for us to read it is that I think it's a really, really funny comic. So he still goes back to the roots of the cartoon being funny, but then he takes it into very real places. So every single issue of the Flintstones focuses on a different topic. It's really a sociological book because he's really examining the roots of the systems that we have in place today. So one of them is about an election. One of them is about veterans.
Oh.
One of them is about consumerism.
In the context of the first ever civilization.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. One of them is about immigration a little bit. There's war, but it's all done with like a satirical touch. But even then, he still brings it home. I think that's what makes it so fantastic.
My immediate thought, or I guess my immediate concern hearing this cold is like, oh, it sounds like it's going to be pretty heavy-handed or forced. Like these sort of anachronistic topics stuffed into this very time-specific story and setting.
Right. So I'm actually really glad you brought that up, Nat, because that's something that Mark Russell addresses in his introduction.
Okay.
So I'm going to read again.
Can I read it?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Yeah,
why
let
not?
me read something. If it was pretentious to write a Flintstones comic about the world visibly imploding around us, I didn't care. This was what I was gonna talk about. Wow, look at this. Heavy-handed? Good. Subtlety had died screaming. To me then, and since, writing was about sounding an alarm on a sinking ship, and you didn't get style points for grad school subtlety and artful nuance. If something is worth talking about, it's worth talking about loudly. Okay, he leaned into it, I guess.
I mean, again, think about when he wrote this, right? It's 2015, which I think for many Americans was a crisis point. Many Americans knew that already, but for a lot of Americans, it was oh wait, we're so much worse than we thought.
And it was pretty heavy-handed.
And it was pretty, and everything happening around you was pretty heavy-handed. He even mentions the rise of fascism. So that colors the election issue, for example.
Right.
But we're not reading the election issue. We're reading issues 4 and issues 9. Issue 4 is about marriage. About the institution of marriage.
Are we reading that?
We're reading that.
Yes, thank you. I love marriage. You know, I love marriage.
Can you say you love your wife?
No, I love.
No, you love marriage more than you love your wife.
The concept of marriage. I love the concept of the union of two individuals in a legally bound institution.
I think you're gonna find this to be your cup of tea, man. And issue 9 is a little bit about consumerism, but it's also continuing an arc that is set up a little bit in issue 4. So one of the best things about the Flintstones comic by Mark Russell,
this particular one,
about this one, is the ways Mark Russell highlights characters that exist in the show but never really get the time of day.
Okay.
And I don't really want to say more than that.
Like the dinosaur?
I don't want to say more than that. I don't want to say more than that.
I have 2 clarifying questions before we read.
Yeah.
One, so The Flintstones, the comic,
Yeah.
existed obviously before this reboot. That's why it's called a reboot.
Yeah.
Was that style the one in the cartoons that we've seen?
You got confused. There's Scooby-Doo comics. There's been Scooby-Doo comics. And I'm
Oh.
sure there's been like novelty Flintstones comics here and there. But there has not been like a run of
So when
the
you say
Flintstones.
reboot, you mean reboot of
the idea.
the IP of the show
Yes.
into a comic. This
Yes.
is the first ever comic.
Yes.
Okay, that wasn't clear to me. Okay.
As far as I understand it to be, this is the most like serious take, the most legitimate take on it that isn't just like a Archie like backstory. Or, like these little things that come out here and there to satisfy people. If I'm wrong about this, folks, if there's been a Flintstones comic and I'm just like totally wrong on this, just tag Nat on Instagram, I think.
And Jacob Collier.
And Jacob Collier. Let him know. Take back that Grammy. Hashtag take back the Grammy.
And second clarifying question.
Yeah.
Do they still drive their cars by running?
It's funny because I remember reading it again to prepare for this, and I looked at the cars and I was like, I feel like they've obscured the feet.
The most important part. you know when they zoom in on this.
like I think that's when Mark Russell was like, I'm drawing a line. We can be goofy, but
You can
come
be
on, come on.
heavy-handed, but not heavy-footed.
Thank you,
No
Nat.
feet. No feet in this comic.
Nat loves talking about feet. All
Thank
right, everybody.
you.
We're going to be reading issues 4 and 9 of The Flintstones by Mark Russell, Steve Pugh, and Chris Chakri. We'll be right back. Yabba dabba doo!
Ruh-roh.
Welcome back, everyone, to Comic Sans. Before we get into what we just read, I do have to issue corrections immediately, mid-show.
Yen was wrong.
I want to say this is not Flintstone Sans. I'm not an expert on the Flintstones.
No,
And to expect me to be an expert on the Flintstones is a bit much. There's been multiple Flintstones comics throughout the years. I'm going to read the titles to you. The Flintstones. The Flintstones. The Flintstones and Pebbles.
Nice.
Hanna-Barbera's The Flintstones.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to like this one. The
The
Flintstones 3D.
Whoa, wait, like this is a comic?
The Flintstone Kids. The Flintstones 1992. The Flintstones 1995. The Flintstones and the Jetsons.
Ooh.
And then the Flintstones 2016.
That's a crossover.
And
for
they've
the
been
ages.
published by everyone. So I'm going to read the publishers: Dell Comics, Gold Key Comics, Charlton Comics. Do you remember what Charlton Comics is?
No.
I believe Charlton Comics is where Alan Moore got the idea for his characters. DC bought Charlton Comics and they said, you can't use these characters. So he made his own.
For
Watchmen.
Watchmen. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, if I'm wrong, just kick my ass. Marvel Comics, Blackthorn Publishing, Marvel Comics again, Harvard Comics, Archie Comics, and then DC Comics where we are now.
So they've done the rounds.
They've done the rounds, and actually in 2023, they announced that Dynamite Entertainment is going to do a Flintstones comic. But I honestly don't know how they can match this one, because this one I feel like covers it so thoroughly. And Nat, now you're going to cover it thoroughly with 5 words. 5 words to sum up the experience of reading it, not necessarily what happened.
Sure. I mean, I'm going to start off with a word that I mentioned in the first half that I was thinking of, which is anachronistic,
Okay?
for sure.
Yeah.
All sense of time out the window.
Yep.
I will also say thematically driven. My third word would be creatures.
Okay.
Creatures featured a lot more. In fact, I think there were more creatures talking than humans,
Okay, Nat, what's your 4th word?
which was not what I was expecting. My 4th word, I'm going to say uncanny.
Okay.
And I use that in multiple ways. I
Okay.
think the art style gives me certain uncanny valley vibes a bit.
Sure.
Maybe because I'm so used to like the
You want to see the old cartoon.
Yeah, and then you see this like chiseled jaw of Fred Flintstone.
Yeah.
You're like, this is weird.
Yeah.
But also like, the topics and the themes and the anachronistic treatment
Yeah.
of, that's kind of uncanny there.
And you got one more.
I mean, I'm just gonna this is a phrase. This is a straight up phrase.
Okay.
What's haps in the craps?
I was hoping that would be it.
What's haps in the craps?
That's gonna make more sense later. But I will say, so Nat read that line out loud when he saw it in the comic.
I mean, that's going into my daily vocabulary.
What's haps in the craps,
What's
man?
haps in the craps, man? Hey guys.
So Nat, now let's tell our listeners, what did you literally read? What was issue 4 about and what was issue 9 about? So issue 4, I believe the subtitle is Domestications.
Yeah.
What's Domestications about?
Well,
Real quick.
Before I get into it, I will say that something that struck me about both these issues, but particularly issue 9, is that it functioned a lot to me like what you would see in cartoons, where you have like 2 or 3 plots.
Plot A and plot
Plot
B.
B. Sometimes you see them in plot C. I think it's like plot C in issue 9 that kind of
Yeah.
all converge by the end.
Yeah.
Either by them literally interacting
Yeah.
or just like thematically, they all kind of like reach the same emotional point. So I think there's a formula and a sort of template there that I kind of observed. Issue 4 is called Domestication. It's about marriage. I think this really threw me off guard because it didn't start with the Flintstones. It started with 1,000 years before Flintstone. The beginning of domestication, when this saber-toothed tiger and this dinosaur are looking at humans and they're talking, and the saber-toothed tiger reveals that they've been ostracized from their pack because they
Had an affair.
with humans for food. And then we jump to the present where we see Dino. I'm so glad to see Dino. Just right off the bat.
You say Dino, I say Dino.
Oh, is it Dino?
I don't know. You can say Dino. I'll say Dino.
Okay. Looking very much like Barney.
Yeah.
Purple, fat.
I mean, I will say, so a lot of the characters get redesigns for the comic, except Dino.
Except Dino.
Dino looks maybe stupider than he does in
That's
the
why. That's why it's so weird, right? Because it's like, yeah, the humans are so like humanified.
realistic.
Yeah,
almost.
yeah. Like, especially with anatomy.
Yeah.
But Dino, no, he's just round.
Yeah.
He's just round and curvy and cute. I guess that's the connection, domestication. And then we get into marriage. I just want to point out TV.
Yeah.
Wild.
In an earlier issue, Fred sees a TV for the first time and tries to break it.
It's crazy. Like, it's just like the minute you see the TV, you just know that all logic is going to go out the window.
No, truly.
Yeah.
And I think the TV is kind of necessary for the type of societal critique Mark Russell is trying to do.
Right.
Right. Without the TV, he's unable to talk about the media,
Yeah.
which is so much of what this comic is about, how we become who we are now.
Right. Fred and Wilma, they're going for a marriage retreat. It's weird. In this marriage retreat, they talk with other couples about marriage, and obviously, it's basically this whole thing is the rhetoric around same-sex marriage, right? Basically,
Yeah.
people kind of think, oh, it's a slippery slope. I mean, it's also interspersed with the plot B, which is there's a town hall happening where people are incensed about marriage and the institution of marriage, and we should just, what's wrong with the sex caves?
Yeah. So just to be very clear, right?
Yeah,
This is essentially we're at the advent of marriage.
right.
And so what Mark Russell is doing, he's treating marriage as if it is gay marriage.
Yeah. Now.
At the first moment when Fred and Wilma are walking around and they're holding hands, this older couple goes by them and goes, go back to the sex cave, right? Because
That's the natural way. That's the way God
natural way.
intended. And then there's also a plot B, I guess, which is when I first encountered
The appliances.
the appliance. I mean, only one of them is called appliance. One of them has name. One of them, the name is appliance. Like, what up, appliance?
No, I think he's using that as like a slang term to refer to each other.
Oh, so it's like, it's the alliance.
Right. There's a lamp, bowling ball, vacuum cleaner. They're all appliances.
Wait, who's the vacuum cleaner?
Well, the vacuum cleaner is the elephant.
Oh, yeah. I was gonna ask you what role does the elephant play? It wasn't clear to me.
You know what? This is also a product of how we record the show. Nat's not reading the issue where they buy a vacuum cleaner,
I see.
which
I
is
see.
but is really like a one-page thing. They just buy a vacuum.
Yeah,
cleaner.
I just thought I didn't know what their role was. Okay, so yeah, the appliances, which are animals.
Yep.
Right. So all these I guess,
Living
I
animals.
guess without electricity,
Yep.
which again, how does the TV work? Who knows? The living animals kind of function like slaves.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is not new, right? This is actually what happens in the cartoon.
I can't remember. Yeah.
In the cartoon, all the appliances are living animals that sometimes talk.
and here they talk a lot.
Mark Russell's like, wait, that's just a life of servitude. And so he really digs into it. And we're gonna keep going, but yeah.
Yeah. And so we have that plot as well.
We get the first meeting between bowling ball and vacuum cleaner.
Yes,
which
very-
I think is very sweet.
Very key for issue 9. And then the town hall and marriage retreat plot lines converge when the marriage retreat people were like, hey, they kind of don't get what they want at the town hall because the mayor's like, we have other things to worry about than marriage. And then they go and storm this retreat and protest, and then people fight. Weird things happen in the marriage retreat. The guy who leads it has very sexist and I guess conservative ideas of marriage. And then Fred and Wilma kind of leave and go like, actually, screw this, you know? And then they get back home to the appliances. The appliances don't do much in this one, right? They just sort
No,
of-
this was more of an introduction. This
Yeah,
was me
yeah, yeah.
seeding issue 9 for you.
Right. So we get to issue 9, a basket of disposables, yes. And so this is where we get to the idea of consumerism. And I think thematically they're exploring the idea of waste and the mass disposal epidemic that we face.
Which is interesting because issue 9 is actually, I think, pulling from ideas from issue 3, which you didn't read, which is where they buy a vacuum cleaner. And that issue is about buying. This issue is about what happens to the things we buy.
Yeah. So I think the major threads is that basically Fred gets laid off. So there's the element of him being disposed there and how that affects his self-worth and self-esteem. Because of that, Wilma buys Fred a new bowling ball to try to cheer him up, and then they get rid of the old bowling ball. Cue the saddest page when a vacuum cleaner realizes that bowling ball is leaving in the recycling truck, and it's so sad. He goes, bowling ball? No. And then also linked to that is this plot C of Fred's boss. Now that I guess he's richer because he laid off all his workers and hired cheap migrant, I would say, labor. With his higher station, he's starting to date around and he's getting new things, disposing of his old loyal servant Philip the turtle and replacing him with Brutus, this giant eagle, enjoying his new lavish life.
Yeah.
But then he gets rejected by his love interest and he realizes he too is being disposed in some way and he feels bad for disposing Philip. So there's just all these threads of how do we treat the things and the people in our lives and what really matters. And then there's a lovely plot of the appliances all going to the recycling center to save Bowling Ball and getting rid of the new one.
Which is, it's funny because it's very sweet because they rally in a way that they didn't think they could to save Bowling Ball. And they're like, okay, but also we need to get rid of the new guy. And so they just dump him on the street. And then he gets carried away by the hawk.
By Brutus. Yeah.
That's issue 9. And the thing I wanted to say earlier is that I think what the Flintstones comic is really about, what Mark Russell is really doing, he's looking at the idea of essentially original sin. He's saying, here's where it all went wrong for us.
Not in a literal earnest way.
No, not in a
because
literal
the whole
earnest
thing,
way.
you know.
Yeah. But he's like, here's why marriage is so confusing to us now. Because at the onset of it, it's a very heteronormative patriarchal institution.
Right.
That didn't make space for other people. That was something that was invented. Right. That's I think what this whole comic's about is how do we invent systems that end up oppressing us. Same thing with consumerism, same thing with waste, same thing with the way Fred's boss, who's a very unlikable character, views himself. His self-worth is tied to the things he owns. And that's a thing he traps himself in. And then by the end of issue 9, he kind of escapes a little bit. But it's really just this comic about why do we suffer for things that we made up? These systems are things that we do to make things easier for us. And in many ways, they make them harder.
Yeah. And it's just also pointing out the absurdity of it all.
Yes.
It's a very conventional tool of satire, right? That you take something that has become commonplace in our society and you kind of transplant it into a new context that makes people go, oh, actually, this is kind of absurd, huh?
Yeah.
The way that we do things.
You pick it up a little, you push it up a little. I mean, one of my favorite moments in issue 4, what we didn't get into is Adam and Steve, which is the classic joke. It's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. It's the argument against gay marriage. Fred's best friends are Adam and Steve. And when Adam and Steve show up at the marriage retreat...
Well, also, the first time we encounter them is standing outside what I imagine is some sort of bar or something.
Yeah.
The signboard says Homo erectus, which is great.
When Adam and Steve show up to the retreat, this marriage counselor
the leader,
priest, who is trying to convert everyone to take on marriage, he sees Adam and Steve and he goes, oh, wait, not these guys. And everyone's like, wait, you just made this up. Why can't you let them in? And he's like, no, that's too much, everybody.
And then he goes down the whole, no, what? The whole point of marriage is to breed more humans. They can't be classic. You know, it's just that whole rhetoric that we all know. I enjoyed something that was said by the TV hosts early on in the episode when they're talking about marriage, where one of the anchors says to the other, what do you think about marriage, Rock? And he says, I think it's an immoral threat to our way of life. And she says, really? Why do you say that? And he says, because it wasn't around when I was a kid. Which I think sums up, like society's resistance to change, to embracing new ideas. Yeah.
So this is 2015. I think the conversation regarding LGBTQ rights has evolved a lot. In 2015, it felt like perhaps gay marriage was the pinnacle.
Yeah.
Was the heights of what we could hope for. And that's where Mark Russell's responding to. I would be really curious to see him return to a plot like this now. Because he seems like a very sensitive person.
I mean, probably about like trans athletes
it
or
would
something.
Probably, yes, it would be. Yeah. So while they're at this retreat, there's this gorgeous panel where everyone's sharing how they feel about marriage and everyone's kind of going surface level. There's an older couple there and they keep fighting. And then the priest goes, okay, Fred, come on. What scares you? Tell everyone. Tell us what scares you. What I want to point out in terms of art, what Steve Pugh and Chris Chuckery do a lot in this comic is they wash away the background. So Fred is in the field of green in one panel and in the next panel he's in this sort of sea of dotted blue. Sense of melancholy, sadness. And he says
that Wilma will stop loving me. And then we get to that panel that Yen's talking about with the blue background, and he goes into a monologue where he says, marriage is like insurance. You only enter into a lifetime commitment because you're afraid of the future. But does being married mean she will love me forever? Or is it just my attempt to keep her from finding someone better? Is marriage really a sacred bond or just the illusion of security?
And then we go back to the full setting of all them sitting in a circle in the group, and the priest goes,
okay, thanks, Fred.
And then he gestures behind him and he goes,
did I mention there's zip lines?
And it's this scatter shot kind of storytelling that I think
Yeah.
makes this comic really fun and makes it a comic,
Mm-hmm.
right? That jump from seriousness to not within the same page all over the place.
What he also touches on, which I didn't mention, is their daughter. Pebbles goes to school with Barney and Betty's kids. And they're talking about marriage. And she's like, is it weird living with married parents? And it's just so absurd, right? Because that's not a conversation that anybody in the 21st century has. It's drawing the parallels to conversations that children of like gay parents might have,
Mhm.
might encounter, you know, in their lives. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to get into it right now. Why are they so jacked? Why are Fred and Barney so built? When in the cartoon, they're so dopey and slopey. And now
They're angular, they're chiseled. Yes.
So Steve Pugh talks about this in an interview I was reading, which is that to him, that character design is very much reflective of Fred, who in this comic is a veteran, works at a job where he has to like do a lot of hard labor,
Mm-hmm.
has this body that's supposed to have equipped him for success, but he is not successful. And it's just adding to this disjunct between this character and his lived experience,
Okay. Yeah.
right?
I see that.
It's again going back to where does modernity take us? Fred's value system from old was that he needs to be tough. And now he's no longer in a society or a civilization that needs him to be that tough.
I think also just from a very like functional standpoint, the fact that on the cover when you see Fred looking like that, if I were just to look at Wilma, at Pebbles, I'm like, oh, okay, that's a take on the character, right?
On the existing
But
characters,
it's
yeah.
like if I were to imagine a more humanized version, it wouldn't be far removed from this.
Yeah.
But then you see Fred, and right, it completely like resets your expectations for what you're about to read, because this is a huge departure from the contents of the cartoon for sure, and I assume all the other comics you've mentioned.
Yeah.
right? I doubt any of them.
Those are more traditional.
Yeah, I doubt any of them really engage with the kind of subject matter and themes and conversations that this attempts and does. And so I think just having that visual departure from whatever one might expect really helps to just sort of, it just blows everything wide open. It's like, okay, I'm not going to be reading about whatever Fred Flintstone normally does in the cartoons. Yeah.
I just thought of the visual marker for our listener who may not have the time to look this up. Fred Flintstone in the Flintstones comic looks like Shrek when he turns human in Shrek 2.
He also looks, I mean, I don't want to race into this. He looks kind of Asian, doesn't he?
Okay, anyway.
I mean, he does.
Anyway, for the listener, Nat's Asian, so it's fine.
It's fine. I can say that.
I want to move on from this topic very quickly.
Let's ask Jacob Collier.
Let's go back to issue 9.
Okay.
That's the broad strokes of issue 4, which I think if you're going to read any issue of this comic, go for issue 4.
Yeah.
I think it packs everything you're going to want from it, and I think that's going to hook you.
Issue 9 does a lot. Maybe a bit too much for me. Like, I also think it's because I'm skipping issues.
Yeah, if you're reading it the way Nat is, it may get you a little lost in the sauce, but it's actually picking up on threads that are coming throughout the
Exactly.
series.
Because I figured this whole like VORP, which is like
Yeah.
this alternate religion that's emerging in opposition to the traditional religion, which is Gerald.
Yeah.
Like they worship a god named Gerald.
I was trying to figure out which issues we should get Nat to read, and there's a great issue on like religion and science in here. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to get like, Ministry of Home Affairs. I don't want to get anyone in trouble, so we're just going to move on from
The
the
Church
religion
of
stuff.
Gerald might come after us.
Exactly. So issue 9, this is a basket of disposables. It has maybe one of my favorite exchanges in the whole comic, which is vacuum cleaner and bowling ball. This is after the family's gone to sleep, and so now the appliances gotta come out to play.
And to remind the reader, in issue 4 is when Bowling Ball and Vacuum Cleaner first meet, right? Bowling Ball opens the closet and sees Vacuum Cleaner there, and Vacuum Cleaner doesn't have any friends.
Yeah.
And this is the first time that Vacuum Cleaner ends encountering friends, and so
Now they are friends.
yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna do a voice. He's a little cute purple elephant. Would you like to hear a joke, bowling ball?
Sure.
Yeah. So would I. Someday it'll happen.
That's so good.
It's so sad, man.
It's kind of giving Eeyore vibes.
It's very much Eeyore
yeah,
vibes,
yeah. I mean, both in terms of like look, but also just demeanor.
Yeah.
And outlook on life, I guess.
I get it, vacuum cleaner. I love to hear a joke.
Would you like to hear a joke, Yen?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Got me. I thought I would get one. I thought that would be a joke for sure. I thought there was no way he'd pull that off.
To be honest, I don't know yet how I feel about the whole appliance premise that these appliances talk and have such... It's so outlandish.
I think it's because you may not have the contextual knowledge. You don't remember from the cartoon that this is existing stuff,
Right, yeah.
right? That this is stuff like they will use the dishwasher, which is a giant octopus, and sometimes they'll talk to them.
Right. It's crazy.
So this is not Mark Russell inventing something completely new.
I guess.
He's just taking
yeah.
it to its logical extreme.
Right.
Again, it's a societal critique, right? We have jobs in society where we have people that we expect to do them voicelessly. Cleaners, garbage disposal, right? In some people, service staff, right? Those are jobs that are supposed to happen without conversation because that's not a person I'm talking to. That person fulfills a function. Their primary goal is to do a function and not to be a person.
And then we forget that, at night, when they're not doing their function, they have lives.
They
and
are
they
a
have
human being.
friends,
They're
and
a
they
full
have,
person.
Yeah. I mean, they're not human beings here.
Not in this comic. Look at him, Stan. He's so cute.
He's so cute. He's so cute.
We're going to post this one somewhere. We'll figure out a way to post this image.
When he's like scheming to go and rescue Bowling Ball, look at his little furrowed eyebrows. And he's
Yeah,
like,
and then he's drawing with his trunk.
I have a pretty good idea.
And let's enter Dino.
Yes, this is important. So this is so important. When Bowling Ball gets taken away because Fred gets a new bowling ball, and the new bowling ball's mean. The new bowling ball doesn't want to open the closet door for vacuum cleaner, which the old bowling ball did.
Yeah, which was the start of their friendship.
Yep. And then vacuum cleaner says, well, we need to act quick if we're going to rescue Bowling Ball. The coat rack moose says, wait, what? And then he says, Bowling Ball was a friend to each and every one of you. If we let him be tossed out with the trash, then we're no better than the humans.
Great point, vacuum cleaner.
They hatch up this plan, and then in walks Dino/Dino, and he's like, hey guys, oh, what's the haps on the quap?
And I love this. I love Mark Russell's treatment of Dino in this because Dino is essentially a class traitor. That's how they treat Dino.
Wow, okay, you're right.
Right? The appliances.
Also very airheaded.
The appliances hate Dino. I mean, this is again, it goes back to, bear with me, Goofy and Pluto from Disney,
100%.
right? Goofy is a dog, so is Pluto. Why
Yeah.
does only one of them wear a leash?
But in that instance, I guess Goofy is the class traitor.
Yes.
Yes.
And so Dino, who is very much at the same level of sentience, if not lower than the appliance.
That's in Pluto.
But he is venerated for it.
Yeah.
Right? The family loves Dino. Dino gets to go out and play. He gets to move in the daytime.
I mean, you don't even have to think about Goofy and Pluto. You just have to think about the dogs that we have as pets and like the animals we eat. I mean, like it's just
True.
It's just there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. What happens with the craps, man?
What's the haps on the craps?
And so the appliances launch their revolution to go find Bowling Ball.
And-
and it gets to this quite chilling page
Yeah.
where they go to the disposable center.
The recycling center.
The recycling center. Most of the comic so far has been these pastel blues and greens, nighttime, and they enter the recycling center, go in the door, and it's just a huge splash of a deep red of the carcasses of all the disposed appliances from the past.
Yep.
Hanging on the walls.
And bones.
I mean, Steve Pugh goes crazy here. They're sliced open, the bones are exposed, the skeletons, carcasses, really. It's pretty horrifying. I would say it's like the single most horrifying panel of the whole comic to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do they get into like how the carnivore appliances eat? Like, what do they eat?
I don't think that's in there, but
I mean, they gotta eat something, so I guess it'll be this, right? They eat retired
yeah,
appliances.
maybe, yeah.
Yeah, which is
And it's just, there's something, why I think this panel is so horrifying is because there's such a cutesy approach to the appliances so far. And it's very like family friendly. Hee, hee, hee. And then it's like, oh no, this is the harsh reality is that when they die, they are,
or rather, when they are retired, they get killed.
Yeah, yeah.
Slaughtered.
thankfully, page turn, Bowling Ball's fine.
Yes, Bowling Ball's all good. They rescue Bowling Ball, and then Mr. Coat Rack Moose decides to just free all the animals in the all the living animals in the recycling center, and they all get free. Do they explore the repercussions of that later on?
No, they don't.
Okay.
What I love, I mean, but it's just nice. It's like, it's also like the Moose is such a throwaway character, but it's already set up that he's a little more cynical. He doesn't even really want to save Bowling Ball.
Right.
But then when faced with these animals that are about to be retired, he decides to free them.
The most important panel I want to get to is the issue ends with Fred and Wilma. Yeah, they're just at home and they open the closet and Dino's tied up like a hostage.
As he should be.
Because they were afraid he was going to rat on them about...
Which he would have.
Yeah.
Occupy Dino.
Class traitor.
I want to go back to a little comic book thing that I like a lot of when they throw away Bowling Ball, which is right after Wilma buys him the new bowling ball. Fred is so happy, and this page is very centered on the humans.
Mm-hmm.
And then she takes the old bowling ball, and we see his face like uncurl a little bit. Usually he tucks firmly as a ball because the appliances follow Toy Story rules.
Yeah.
If the humans are looking, they are not doing a function unless they are asked to do the function. And Wilma throws away bowling ball in a white panel, whitewash panel, no longer realistic background, and just a little sound effect, thunk. And then the next page, it's vacuum cleaner's perspective, and it's clunk, dump, bowling ball, no!
Wrong voice.
Bowling ball, no! I think the shift in perspective, like the way that Mark Russell boxes it into one page.
Yeah.
Right? So the one page is the humans and the other page is the animals. Like it's a very intentional shift in tone, right? It's, oh, this is good news for Fred. Fred's happy. Yay, 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 yay. Throw away the thing, whatever. Oh, actually, that has a disastrous consequence for the appliances.
Another thing is, since there is a vehicle on this page, I think it's important to point out. So we talked about the cars. I asked about the cars and the feet. So in this one, the driver is driving a big recycling center. I think it's very unlikely it's foot powered.
No.
It's unclear how it's powered.
Yeah.
Later on the next page, you see a Triceratops pulling a carriage. So that's, I don't know if that's in the original Flintstones. Is dinosaur powered vehicles in the... This is really important, by the way.
The bulldozers are animals
In the cartoon?
in the cartoon.
Okay.
So this is not that much of a stretch. And
But
there are
importantly,
Yeah. This is huge.
in issue 9, there was a car. And right below the car, you can see a glimpse of a foot.
The dogs are out.
The dogs
The
are
dogs
out.
are indeed out, and they are a barking.
And so the cars are fully foot powered, but somehow there's light. They have headlamps, which is confusing from an electricity standpoint. But again, we don't question the logic of this world. I don't think the original Flintstones cared for it. Maybe they cared for it more than Mark Russell did.
I think Mark Russell is deliberately defiant of any internal logic. Okay, Nat, I actually do have a little surprise.
Oh.
I have like 4 more pages for you to read.
Oh, I thought you were going to
Walk-in vacuum cleaner.
No, you're going to... Fred Flintstone.
So for the reader, it's hard to delineate the page numbers, but I'm just going to say we're going to be reading 2 pages from issue 6 and 2 pages from issue 10.
Okay.
And that's going to, I think this is going to be interesting. We're going to see what happens. So this is after Fred's had a terrible day at work, and he's going to the bowling alley to take out his frustration.
So we're at the lanes. We're at the Cranes Lanes. This is Fred. Thanks, Barn. This is just what I needed, man. Work was brutal today. Picks up his bowling ball, bowls it, hits the pins. Yes. Barney says, "You're on fire, Fred." We cut to the house where vacuum cleaner and bowling ball are talking. "Man, work was brutal today," says bowling ball. "So, what happens when he takes you out at night?" "I don't know how to explain it. He rolls me across the floor as hard as he can for no reason at all. I've tried to figure out how to stop making him so angry, but nothing I do seems to make any difference." That's a text box over Fred going, "Yabba dabba freaking do," as he crashes.
It's a strike, as he bowls a strike with poor bowling ball.
And then bowling ball keeps talking. "Then I get swept into a dark tunnel and I think, oh, this is it. This is where I die. But then I come out the other end and the horror show starts all over again."
Isn't this miserable?
and then bowling ball has his fist in the air.
Facing the
Is
sky.
this my life? Is this all I mean to the universe? Whenever they're finished vacuuming the floor, the humans just stick me back in the closet. And then bowling ball is crying, "Sob." And then vacuum cleaner says, "I have no idea when I'll ever see daylight again, but do you know what keeps me going there in the dark?" "What?" "Knowing that my friend bowling ball is on the other side of the door. It makes me think maybe the only meaning to life is that which we get from each other."
Isn't that so sweet?
Oh, if I had read that before
Yeah.
bowling ball getting thrown into the dumpster, that would have made me cry.
That last panel, importantly, it's literally just vacuum cleaner in a long page panel. So across the page, most of it is completely in black because it's shadow. And when vacuum cleaner first arrives, it's established that vacuum cleaner is actually afraid of the dog.
Oh.
So this really sucks.
That sucks.
And he's standing next to the door and he's touching the door because he knows his friend bowling ball is on the other side of it.
Let's be clear, we don't know their genders. Do we know their genders?
No, we don't.
Yeah, so they're all kind of like gender neutral, gender.
Yeah. Okay, and now we're going to issue 10. So Nat's not going to read 2 sequential pages. He's going to read 2 single pages. And so one of them is vacuum cleaner's day out, when I think Wilma accidentally lets him out of the house or brings him out with her for like repairs, and he ends up in a movie theater.
Okay, so at the Flintstones house, this is bowling ball. "Have you seen vacuum cleaner?" "Nope." "I wonder where he's been going at night."
This is the movie that vacuum cleaner's watching.
"Oh, my mother not know her worth until too late. Too late for her." It's caveman talk. And then so vacuum cleaner's in the empty movie theater. but not too late for us. So beautiful. Then vacuum cleaner is leaving the cinema. Wow, what a great movie. This was the best night ever. That floor is filthy, Gary. Take that vacuum cleaner and go clean it. This is the movie theater owner talking to his employee, who then grabs vacuum cleaner. No, not a movie theater floor. Anything but that. Oh no. This is the second page that I'm reading. Barney's talking to Fred.
And there's the bowling alley once again.
Okay. Hey Fred, what did the pirate say on his 18th birthday? What? Aye, matey? I don't get it.
I'm 80.
I'm 80. Oh, I'm 80. Haha, fantastic joke, Barn. What? That's a joke? Says the bowling ball. Vacuum cleaner's been waiting his entire life to hear a joke? What did the pirate say to the... No, how did it go? It was his 80th birthday, so he said, I'm 80. Oh, I get it. Holy God, vacuum cleaner is going to be so happy. I can't wait to tell him. Hi, honey. I'm home. What's going on here? Says Fred. Wilma. Oh, nothing. The vacuum cleaner died. The vacuum cleaner died. I'm afraid. The bowling ball goes, no, what? No, this comic's crazy.
Wait, Nat. Now are you ready for this?
There's more?
Look at the cover again.
No! No!
Okay, Nat, describe the cover. Describe this completely obvious part of the cover that is, if you've not read the comic, you'll have no idea what you're looking at.
I was like, why on earth is the biggest thing on the cover, in the foreground, bowling ball, as opposed to the family? It's like, okay, maybe, it features more in the comic than I realized, but then...
He can't even say it.
I can't bring myself to say it.
It's a beautifully wispy cloud version of vacuum cleaner floating in the sky.
He died?
Yeah.
They died?
Vacuum cleaner dies.
Like kaput?
Yes.
Never came back?
Never
Can
come
I charge
back.
him or something?
No. We skipped some pages within issue 10 where after the movie theater incident, Wilma's using vacuum cleaner and you can tell vacuum cleaner looks sick, but it's not the primary action. It's really just like a little thing in the background.
Death by Cinema Floor.
Yeah. Okay, you know what, Nat? We're going to read one more thing, okay?
Is it going to make me happier?
I hope so. I
God.
feel bad now for doing this to you.
God. Why would you do that after I did the voice and everything?
We're now on issue 12, another 2-page spread, and this is Fred and Barney going into the garage.
And Fred's holding a bowling ball and he's saying, I may never bowl again. And Barney says, it's okay, Fred. My garage is a museum of failed hobbies. I guess they put bowling ball in the garage, and then now we see bowling ball in the garage alone, and then we hear a hello coming from somewhere, a drawer. Can you let me out? I'm scared of the dark. Who are you? Says bowling ball as he opens the drawer, and it's
a smaller vacuum cleaner.
It's a smaller elephant.
It's like a portable vacuum cleaner.
With a handle.
Yeah.
And he says, I'm Shop Vac. Here. Bowling ball helps him down. Wow, I've never been to the floor before. Come on, I'll make you a snack. And then they're eating peanuts, and then bowling ball saying, the key is not to think about work when you're not working. That's when they own you. The second the humans leave, your mind is your own. Let it wander as far from them as possible. That and having a comfortable place to sleep helps. Really? Nobody tells me anything in the drawer. There, that's better. And he's giving him a little pillow and a blanket. If you get scared or need help with anything, just give me a call and I'll be there. That's what a friend does. How did you get to know so much? And then the final panel is just this complete, again, like in
the whitewash.
Washed out background, bowling ball leaning against a box or something, and there's like a little window with a moon outside, and he says, somebody taught me. Damn. Now I'm all in. Now I'm all in with the appliances. Now I get okay.
That's why.
Screw the humans.
No, truly, right? That's honestly going back to what I said at the start, which is that what makes the Flintstones so special is how Mark Russell treats characters that you don't expect.
That's what you meant.
This is literally what I was talking about.
Vacuum
and I was like, I don't want to foreground it too much. I don't want to let you know. But that to me is what the heart of this comic is about, right?
This won't make any bet. I gotta let Janine read this.
You have to. You have to.
She'll cry.
It's so sad, man. It's so sad, but it's also very poignant. And I think it comes back to that moment in issue 6 that I had you read of vacuum cleaner and a bowling ball ranting about how awful his day is, which is so funny because he's like, he thinks he can do something to stop the guy from being angry. No, he's not even angry. This is just what
It's sport.
This is just what society has deemed your function to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Vacuum Cleaner says that thing about maybe that's all life is about, right? It's about connecting with the people around you, no matter what the suffering is around.
I'm gonna let Janine, my wife, read this. I think she's really gonna enjoy it, especially the animals. And speaking of my wife, I wanna, as we close up this episode,
Mm-hmm.
I wanna read what was the most important part of this comic to me, which is Fred's perspective on marriage. As they leave this disaster of a marriage retreat, Wilma and Fred are talking about, do you still want to be married? And she's like, I just want you. Whatever label you want to put on it, I want you. And he says, to me, marriage is about looking at yourself through someone else's eyes. I've had to look at myself through your eyes for 15 years, and you never once made me feel small or ashamed. It's the nicest thing anyone's ever done for me.
Isn't that beautiful?
That's beautiful.
In the
Flintstones. I've been married for 4 years. I've read stuff on marriage.
Yeah.
I've never heard that perspective before, and that was fresh. And I was like, wow, like that is so true, to see yourself through your partner's eyes, and in a way that hopefully is uplifting, and in a way that makes you a better person.
And
Thank you, Fred Flintstone.
And it's coming from a character whose catchphrase is
Yabba
Yabba
dabba
Dabba Doo! No, that's the experience of reading this comic. It's constantly being like, feeling something and being like, wait, this? That, we're nearing the end of our discussion on this wonderful comic. Sorry, everyone, for the spoilers. I really do hope you read it. But now we're going to see if Nat will. So there's 2 questions I have for you, Nat. Would you keep reading?
It's an interesting question, because I do think when I first, obviously read, and I didn't read it the right way, right? I read issue 4, issue 9 in complete isolation. And I think for me, there definitely was this element of like just not being able to find my footing. It's a very confounding comic, for reasons we talked about, where it's really just like you get hit with like poignancy, you get hit with like such deep insight, but it's also so silly and it's just so like nonsensical and illogical. So it's just those 2 things clashing that kind of like, I feel like it could turn some readers away. I can definitely see some people be like, this is too much for me. If you lean into it, which I think by the end I did, you'd be like, oh, this is not only fun, which I think Flintstones always has been fun.
Yeah.
Right? But it takes the fun to a level, to a depth that even if you don't completely enjoy it, it's fascinating. So to answer the question, I do see myself reading it. I'm going to probably convince my wife to read it as well.
Wonderful.
I think we'll enjoy talking about it.
I think this is the greatest victory I've ever had.
This is the first
not
comic.
Not only will Nat read it, he will bring it to his wife.
This is the first comic that I said I'm going to bring to Janine.
No, yeah. And,
Yeah,
I think it's a comic that everyone really can get something out of.
Yeah.
I think, like you said, you have to kind of ride the wave. You have to accept what it's doing for you, which is it's going to be a little funny. And then sometimes it's going to hit you with some really hard truths. And if you should be able to take both of those at once, because that's what life is.
That's the world we live in.
And somehow it's recreated in Bedrock. And so the second question, which is our pipeline, right? So Nat, do you have a recommendation of, if you like something, you'll like the Flintstones? I have an answer.
Okay.
And I think you're not going to like that I'm saying it before you, because when I say it, you're going to be like,
Sure, go ahead.
Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like comedy and seriousness and realness all at once.
And like just like nonsense.
Complete like gobbledygook rubbish. And then somebody says something and you're like, I'm going to cry.
Yeah. The perfect scene that from that tonally that captures this is the Rocks. The Rocks having that conversation, the mother and daughter, that is so poignant, but it's so stupid.
Yeah. And then the question goes on to me,
Yes.
right? Which is, if you like the Flintstones, what should you go read
What's
next?
the next comic? The Jetsons. Is that even a comic?
Actually similar. I was actually going to say something similar, which is Mark Russell's follow-up within this line was Snagglepuss. Exit Stage Left is what I believe it was called. Which, do you remember the character of Snagglepuss?
No.
So it's also a cartoon character. He's a lisp, and he goes exit stage left, and he like runs away, and he's always getting
Never
the
heard of it.
hijinks, and he was always coded as queer, basically,
Oh.
but in a comedic way.
Mm-hmm.
And his comic, Mark Russell's take on Snagglepuss, as you can guess, takes it to a real place where it's about Snagglepuss as a playwright, which is what he is in the cartoons, as a playwright during the Red Scare, during the McCarthy trials, which is when Hollywood was being culled by these right-wing people who were saying, oh, they're communists, they're unnatural, they're not part of our society, and a lot of gay people were targeted during this time. And so it's a bizarre thing because he's a cat. He's an anthropomorphic cat, and that's but that.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Just
so
to be
late
really
into,
clear.
yeah,
Sorry, he's a pink cat. He's a pink cat that I believe has a bow tie.
that is not the Pink Panther.
That is not the Pink Panther. But that's what I would recommend. Is Snagglepuss Exit Stage Left.
Cool.
Yeah, and honestly, I think Mark Russell is a really fantastic comic book writer, and I would recommend. I think a lot of his books take on a similar tone. So there's another one which I think is Not All Robots, which is about emancipation. And again, I think an idea that he never escapes from in his writing is, who do we treat as secondhand citizens? Why do we have strata within our society where some people are deemed more human than others?
And who are the class traders?
And who are the class traders?
Freaking Dino.
Freaking Dino, man.
You know, Yen, we forgot to do something at the start of this episode.
What?
The media we've been...
I know. I realized that pretty late in.
Should we just do it now? You know, hey, it's start of a new season. We're rusty. It's been a
Yeah,
while.
we're
It's been a while.
keyed in.
Let's end this episode. You know, something different. Let's end the episode with something we've been enjoying. You know, if all this wasn't your jazz, but you made it this long, we'll give you something else. Just something completely irrelevant that we've been enjoying recently that you might enjoy. Janine and I have been watching this show that everyone's been watching, so I don't think there's much of a wreck, but you know, this Culinary Class Wars.
Oh, yeah.
This show. It's like a Korean cooking show, but it like pits top tier Michelin star chefs against up and coming chefs. It's really fun. You know, the Koreans, they know how to do a game show. If they know how to do one thing, it's game shows.
I'm not going to speak on what the Koreans can and can't do. I don't think that's my place to say. I will say what I have been reading.
They also can ferment food really well.
2 things Koreans can do.
Game shows.
Apparently, according to Nat.
Fermented food.
I've been reading, and I think this is relevant, is Sabretooth, the recent run by Victor Laval. It's a Marvel comic about the Wolverine villain, Sabretooth.
Mm-hmm.
And similar to Flintstones, it takes it to a place where you just keep not expecting where it's going to go, and it really makes some very salient societal critiques. So that comic is about perhaps one of the most reprehensible characters in the X-Men, in the X-Men like history.
Like villain.
Villain. But the comic itself is actually about transformative justice and punitive justice.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where you're like, how is this working? But it works. So I would recommend that.
Episode 1 of season 3. We're off to a great start.
We're on a hot streak right now of 1. Thanks everyone for listening. Season 3, I think, is going to be a bit of a roller coaster. We're going to be going all over the place. We're going to be going, I think, a little bit all over the world too.
Is that the word? Yabba Dabba family? That's not the words.
From the town of Bedrock, there's a little piece of history.
Such a good song. It's such a good song. I don't know the words. Dun, 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 dun. And I have the Jake Collier version in my head. It's like,
Sing me out while I do our outro.
okay. Flintstones. Meet the Flintstones.
Thanks everyone for listening to Comic Sans. We'll see you on the next page.
See ya. Thanks for listening to Comic Sans. This is an Andaz Productions podcast hosted by Mao Yente and Nathaniel Ma and produced by Scott Lee Chua and Roshan Singh Sambi. This episode was audio edited by Maddie Searle, video edited by Kit Ling Leong, and transcribed by Danielle Ann Espinosa. Our cover art and motion graphic animations are by Konechny Studio, Mariana Rudakova. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to rate and review Comic Sans. And while you're at it, follow us on social media at Comic Sans Pod. Links are in the description below.